In 1941, at a theater gala in New York, the glances exchanged between Tallulah Bankhead and Billie Holiday weren't just the beginning of a love story. They were also the start of music history's most courageous rescue operation. Tallulah was not only the era's most famous theater star, but also the daughter of Alabama's wealthy and powerful Bankhead family. Through this connection, she had contacts everywhere from the Senate to the FBI. When she first saw Billie Holiday, she fell in love not only with Lady Day's music but also with her fight against injustice. From that night on, Tallulah transformed into a secret hero who risked her own life to save Billie from the FBI's clutches. Using the political connections she had as the daughter of Alabama's powerful family, she began inviting federal agents to her parties to control them. But when the FBI discovered this relationship, Tallulah also became a target. If you want to discover all the secret details of this story, please subscribe and turn on notifications, because Tallulah Bankhead's fight to save Billie Holiday will reveal one of music history's most courageous stories of love and sacrifice. October 15, 1941, Majestic Theater. Tallulah Bankhead was starring in The Little Foxes that night, and after her performance, New York's elite had gathered at the gala. As Tallulah emerged from backstage, she listened to the music playing at the gala and heard the most powerful voice she had ever experienced in her life. Billie Holiday was performing Strange Fruit as the evening's special guest. Tallulah froze at that moment because both the song's lyrics and Billie's courage deeply affected her. After the gala, despite organizers wanting to introduce Billie to her, Tallulah approached Lady Day directly. The first conversation between these two women would begin both a personal and political revolution. Tallulah had noticed how FBI agents took notes after Billie's Strange Fruit performance, and this situation disturbed her. Coming from Alabama's Southern aristocracy, Tallulah knew very well what racism meant, but in Billie Holiday she saw a brave soul standing up to this injustice. The most critical moment of that evening was when Tallulah asked Billie, "Can I see you again?" However, this wasn't just romantic interest. Tallulah sensed the danger surrounding Lady Day. Seeing federal agents watching Billie, Tallulah thought she could help her using her own political connections. This thought was the beginning of not just the love that brought two women together, but also a mission for which Tallulah would risk her life for Billie. After the gala, as Tallulah returned home with her private driver, she thought about Billie Holiday. It wasn't just Lady Day's music that affected Tallulah, but also the systematic oppression she faced. Having grown up in Alabama, and considering herself opposed to the racism she witnessed, Tallulah now found an opportunity to put this belief into action. That night at home, while noting what she knew about the FBI, she began making plans to protect Billie Holiday. Tallulah Bankhead's father, William Brockman Bankhead, was Speaker of the House of Representatives from Alabama and one of America's most powerful political figures. Tallulah's grandfather had served for many years in the Alabama Senate. This family background provided Tallulah with extraordinary access in Washington and federal agencies. However, until she met Billie Holiday, Tallulah had only used these connections for her own career. After her relationship with Billie began, Tallulah systematically started using her father's political connections. She would ask casual questions to family friends working at the FBI, making innocent-seeming inquiries like, "How serious is this Billie Holiday matter?" Through these conversations, she learned that Lady Day was under federal surveillance and that her Strange Fruit performances were viewed as a national security threat. One of her cleverest moves was arranging a family dinner with FBI Associate Director Clyde Tolson. Tolson was J. Edgar Hoover's right-hand man and directly responsible for the FBI's Billie Holiday operations. At the informal family gathering, Tallulah asked Tolson questions about Billie Holiday, but she did this in the role of the curious daughter of Alabama aristocracy. Because of Tallulah's political family background, Tolson let his guard down and inadvertently revealed some details about the plans regarding Lady Day. This intelligence gathering was shocking for Tallulah because she learned that the FBI wasn't just monitoring Billie Holiday, but was actively trying to destroy her. The scope of the operation was much more comprehensive than Tallulah had imagined, encouraging drug addiction, career sabotage, financial pressure, and even potential elimination. This discovery transformed Tallulah's casual interest into a life-and-death mission. Beginning in 1942, the parties held at Tallulah Bankhead's Manhattan penthouse became one of New York society's most popular events. However, the real purpose of these glamorous gatherings was to infiltrate FBI agents and gather intelligence about Billie Holiday. Tallulah would prepare carefully selected guest lists for each party and strategically invite federal agents. Her party strategy was sophisticated. Tallulah would lower agents' defenses with alcohol and entertainment, then bring up Billie Holiday topics in casual conversations. She would start with innocent questions like, "Have you heard of that jazz singer Billie Holiday? Is she really that dangerous?" and extract valuable information from agents' responses. This technique was so effective that some agents unconsciously revealed operational details. The most successful infiltration was with Special Agent Frank Williams. Williams was assigned to the Billie Holiday surveillance team and had become a regular attendee at Tallulah's parties. Tallulah showed romantic interest in Williams, and through this personal connection she obtained inside information about the FBI's plans for Billie. Williams occasionally shared classified information to impress Tallulah's Alabama political family, thinking this was harmless name-dropping. The most dangerous moment was when Williams accidentally mentioned Billie's planned arrest date. Tallulah immediately relayed this information to Billie, and Lady Day disappeared from the city that night. Williams's superiors became suspicious of this coincidence, but didn't make direct accusations due to Tallulah's political connections. However, this incident caused the FBI to place Tallulah under closer scrutiny. The relationship between Tallulah Bankhead and Billie Holiday was incredibly risky considering 1940s social norms. It was not only interracial but also a same-sex relationship, and this situation could destroy both their careers. However, for Tallulah, this risk was of secondary importance compared to her mission to protect Billie. The meetings between the two women were organized with maximum secrecy. Secret meeting locations were carefully selected: private cabins in upstate New York, trusted friends' estates, and sometimes Tallulah's own properties. Tallulah would prepare elaborate cover stories for these meetings and hire private security. These precautions were necessary not only to protect the relationship but also to ensure Billie's safety. During these intimate moments, Tallulah would share the latest intelligence she had learned from the FBI with Billie. Lady Day initially received Tallulah's warnings skeptically because she didn't fully appreciate the extent of federal surveillance. However, Tallulah's accurate predictions which venues would ban Billie, which radio stations would refuse to play her songs, caused Lady Day to trust Tallulah's information sources. The most emotional conversation was when Billie asked Tallulah, "Why are you taking so much risk for me?" Tallulah's answer revealed the true nature of their relationship. "Because you're not just singing, you're fighting against injustice, and I'm fighting alongside you in this war." This declaration demonstrated the evolution from purely romantic interest to civil rights activism. By mid-1943, FBI analysts began noticing unusual patterns in their Billie Holiday surveillance. Lady Day's mysterious disappearances before arrests, the failure of planned raids, and the compromise of informants directed the FBI's attention to the possibility of systematic interference. An internal investigation was launched, and a new file was opened under the code name Subject T. The FBI's initial analysis indicated that the person providing Billie Holiday's protection had significant resources and political connections. Surveillance teams monitored Lady Day's meetings and communications more closely, and Tallulah Bankhead's name began emerging repeatedly. However, due to Tallulah's political family background, the FBI was reluctant to take immediate action. The breakthrough moment was when Agent Williams reported Tallulah's suspicious questions to his superiors. Williams had initially considered Tallulah's interest as innocent curiosity, but pattern analysis showed that Tallulah was systematically gathering intelligence. FBI analysts correlated the information Williams had given Tallulah with Billie's subsequent disappearances and established the connection. The most damning evidence was obtained when the FBI wiretapped Tallulah's phone lines. Recorded conversations clearly demonstrated that Tallulah was warning Billie about FBI activities. This evidence convinced the FBI to subject Tallulah to an official investigation. However, due to the Bankhead family's political influence, this investigation had to be conducted carefully. In 1944, the FBI decided to target Tallulah Bankhead through family pressure rather than direct confrontation. The Bureau made an unofficial approach to Tallulah's father, William Brockman Bankhead, and warned him about his daughter's potentially problematic activities. This approach was strategic for the FBI because family internal pressure could be more effective than public scandal. After the FBI briefing, William Bankhead had a serious conversation with his daughter. Bankhead, who had a long career in Alabama politics, well understood the potential consequences of confrontation with federal agencies. He explained to Tallulah that his political capital was limited and that direct conflict with the FBI could jeopardize the family's entire political standing. Tallulah's reaction illustrated the tragic conflict between family expectations and personal convictions. The daughter told her father that she had witnessed injustice against Billie Holiday and felt a moral obligation.
William Bankhead, although sympathetic, emphasized practical realities. The Alabama political dynasty couldn't afford a war with the federal government. This conversation created a heartbreaking dilemma for Tallulah. Despite family pressure, Tallulah refused to abandon Billie Holiday. However, she was forced to modify her strategy. She reduced direct intelligence gathering, but continued to provide financial support and legal assistance for Billie. This adaptation demonstrated the depth of Tallulah's commitment. Despite family threats, she didn't completely abandon Lady Day.
As Billie Holiday's inevitable arrest approached in 1947, Tallulah Bankhead made one final desperate attempt. Learning that the FBI was targeting Lady Day with drug charges, Tallulah activated her highest-level political connections. She utilized every possible influence source from the Alabama delegation to federal judges. Her most ambitious plan was Tallulah personally requesting a meeting with J. Edgar Hoover. The Bankhead family name commanded attention even from the FBI director. The meeting took place privately at FBI headquarters, and Tallulah presented the Billie Holiday case from a civil rights perspective. She emphasized Lady Day's artistic value and the unjust persecution to Hoover. Hoover's response was shocking for Tallulah. The FBI director not only refused to discuss Billie's case but also made thinly veiled threats about Tallulah's subversive associations. Hoover expressed concerns to Tallulah about her Alabama family's political future and suggested she needed to avoid inappropriate friendships. This meeting was a wake-up call for Tallulah. The FBI's power could challenge even political dynasties. When Billie's arrest proceeded, Tallulah explored every possible legal avenue. She hired the best lawyers, provided bail money, and tried to organize a media campaign. However, the FBI's systematic approach was overwhelming, and Lady Day was eventually sent to prison. This failure was a profound disappointment for Tallulah and a painful acknowledgement of her own limitations. During the 10 months Billie Holiday stayed at Alderson Federal Prison, Tallulah Bankhead continued to secretly provide support. Although direct communication was impossible, Tallulah transferred money to Lady Day's commissary account and maintained legal support. This period was emotionally devastating for Tallulah because she had failed in her mission to protect Billie. The prison administration was aware of Tallulah's attempts but didn't interfere due to political sensitivity. However, Tallulah's letters didn't reach Billie because the FBI monitored all correspondence. This isolation was painful for both women and represented the first major crisis of their relationship. Tallulah tried to develop alternative communication methods, but prison security was sophisticated. After Billie's release, the relationship had a different dynamic. Lady Day's prison experience was traumatic, and the failure of Tallulah's protection efforts created trust issues. Additionally, because FBI surveillance was targeting both women, meetings became extremely risky. Tallulah struggled with a sense of guilt because despite her powerful connections, she couldn't save Billie. The most challenging aspect was Billie's increased drug dependency. The prison experience and continued harassment had driven Lady Day into deeper addiction, and Tallulah had difficulty coping with this problem. Tallulah tried to fund rehabilitation programs, but Billie's resistance and the FBI's continued interference complicated these efforts. In the early 1950s, the FBI made Tallulah Bankhead a direct target. The Bureau claimed that Tallulah had communist sympathizer tendencies and launched an elaborate surveillance campaign. This escalation was shocking for Tallulah because she saw her purely humanitarian motivations being characterized as political subversion. The FBI file on Tallulah contained extensive documentation, party guest lists, phone call transcripts, financial transactions, and even personal relationships. The Bureau tried to incorporate Tallulah's association with Billie Holiday into a broader communist infiltration narrative. This characterization was both factually incorrect and politically dangerous. The most insidious aspect was the FBI's efforts to sabotage Tallulah's career. Theater producers, movie studios, and radio networks received subtle pressure to avoid projects with Tallulah. This economic warfare was devastating for Tallulah because it directly threatened her livelihood. Personal relationships were also affected. The FBI interviewed Tallulah's friends and colleagues and asked them questions about Tallulah's loyalty. These intimidation tactics drove Tallulah into social isolation, and many longtime friends distanced themselves. This isolation was particularly painful because Tallulah's entire social support system eroded. During Billie Holiday's final illness, Tallulah Bankhead took the risk to visit Lady Day at the hospital. This meeting was an emotional reunion for the two women after years of separation. When Tallulah saw Billie's condition, she was devastated because years of harassment and addiction had transformed Lady Day into a shadow of her former self. The conversation in the hospital room was both an apology and reconciliation. Tallulah expressed deep regret for not being able to fully protect Billie. Lady Day acknowledged Tallulah's efforts and praised her courage. The two women honored the memory of their shared struggle and recognized that their love transcended FBI oppression. The most poignant moment was when Billie told Tallulah, "You were my guardian angel, not a failure." These words provided profound relief for Tallulah because they alleviated the guilt she had carried for years. Lady Day explained how much difference Tallulah's protection efforts had made, and that without her support the situation could have been much worse. The final goodbye was heartbreaking for both women because the severity of Billie's condition was obvious. As Tallulah left the hospital, she struggled with tears and realized this was probably their final meeting. A few days later, Billie Holiday died, and Tallulah remained with lifetime guilt. Despite heroic efforts, she couldn't save her beloved Lady Day. After Billie Holiday's death, Tallulah Bankhead didn't speak publicly about their relationship. The political climate of the 1950s would have made such an admission career suicide, and Tallulah was already struggling due to FBI harassment. However, privately, Tallulah continued to honor Lady Day's memory and quietly provided support to civil rights causes. Tallulah's later years were marked by a sense of regret. Despite extraordinary efforts and significant personal risks, she couldn't save Billie Holiday from FBI persecution. This failure was a lifelong source of pain for Tallulah, and she often wondered whether alternative strategies could have provided success. However, objective analysis shows that Tallulah's efforts were remarkable. The daughter of Alabama aristocracy directly confronted the federal government and attempted to protect a minority artist at significant personal cost. This courage, especially in the context of the 1940s, was extraordinary and deserves recognition. From a modern perspective, Tallulah Bankhead should be considered an early civil rights ally. Her fight for Billie Holiday wasn't purely personal, but was also part of a broader justice struggle. Tallulah's story demonstrates that individual courage can challenge systematic oppression, even when ultimate success cannot be achieved. In the 1990s, at Tallulah Bankhead's estate sale, previously unknown documents were discovered. These materials revealed the full extent of Tallulah's efforts for Billie Holiday, and for the first time for the public, documented the true nature of the relationship between the two women. This discovery significantly enhanced both women's legacies. Personal letters demonstrated Tallulah's deep love and commitment. In the correspondence, Tallulah detailed elaborate protection plans for Billie and shared collected intelligence about FBI activities. These letters confirmed that the relationship wasn't purely romantic, but was also a political partnership. The most significant discovery was Tallulah's detailed diary documenting her encounters with the FBI. This diary recorded how systematically Tallulah manipulated federal agents and obtained valuable intelligence. The diary entries demonstrated Tallulah's sophisticated understanding of government operations and revealed her strategic approach. Additional documents included financial records showing Tallulah's expenses for Billie, legal fees, bail money, living expenses, and even medical costs. These expenditures were substantial and indicated Tallulah's serious commitment to Lady Day's welfare. The total amount was equivalent to hundreds of thousands of dollars in modern currency. With the declassification of additional FBI files in the 2000s, the full scope of the Tallulah Bankhead and Billie Holiday story emerged. These documents confirmed that the FBI targeted both women and revealed the extensive nature of surveillance. The Bureau had categorized Tallulah as a dangerous subversive despite her purely humanitarian motivations. FBI analysis inadvertently documented how effective Tallulah's efforts were. Bureau reports blamed Tallulah's interference for the failure of numerous planned arrests of Billie Holiday. This documentation proved that Tallulah's protection efforts had significant impact. Contemporary historians have placed Tallulah's story in a broader civil rights context. Academic research has determined that her efforts were an early example of privileged allies supporting marginalized communities. This analysis positioned Tallulah as an important figure in the prehistory of the civil rights movement. International interest was also generated. European scholars studied the American government's systematic campaign against its citizens and highlighted Tallulah's resistance as a heroic example. This international perspective provided additional legitimacy to Tallulah's story and introduced it to a global audience. Tallulah Bankhead's fight for Billie Holiday went down in history as an extraordinary example of how powerful individual courage could be in 1940s America. The daughter of Alabama aristocracy risked her social status for confrontation with the federal government and attempted to protect beloved Lady Day. Although this effort ultimately couldn't achieve success, it demonstrated remarkable bravery and dedication. The relationship between the two women was much more complex than purely personal love. It included shared struggle against racial injustice, civil rights commitment, and joint resistance against government oppression. This multifaceted relationship flourished despite 1940s social constraints and created lasting impact. Tallulah's legacy should be remembered not just as a failed rescue mission, but also as inspiration for early civil rights activism. Her story demonstrates that privileged individuals have a moral obligation to support oppressed communities and stand against injustice. This message remains relevant for contemporary social movements. The story of Billie Holiday and Tallulah Bankhead is ultimately about the triumph of love. Despite systematic oppression, two remarkable women formed an authentic connection and supported each other in impossible circumstances. This human connection transcended government harassment and created a lasting legacy for both women. Their courage continues to inspire future generations and reminds us of the importance of the fight for justice. Tallulah Bankhead never fully saved Billie Holiday, but her fight for her will remain one of music history's most courageous love stories. This secret hero who shared Lady Day's pain and tried to protect her proved the power of justice and love.